this is a saucisson, a great big French sausage. And here's another saucisson. And here are some little pork sausages, some saucisses. And here is how to stuff your own. Today, on the French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. These are some homemade sausage links. And they really look great, don't they? They look just as though you'd bought them. But one of the great things about them is you make them yourself and you know exactly what's in them. And here are two great big French type sausages called saucissons à cuire or saucissons de ménage. And these are big homemade sausages, and they're wonderful to cook and to slice and to eat with potatoes and with beans and with cabbage. And this is the kind of sausage when you go to France and you go into one of those charcuteries or wonderful delicatessens that you can buy and you take home and you poach in white wine and then you slice and serve, and you just can rarely find them here. Sometimes you can find them ready-made, but that's very rare. But you can perfectly easily make them yourself. And the great thing about it is that you can just do it with cheesecloth and a little bit of string, which is great. And now here is a big bowl of sausage meat. And sausage is simply ground fresh pork, fat, lean pork and fat pork, and seasonings. And the problem when you're buying fresh pork is to be able to get the right kind of fat, because to make the proper sausage meat you should have lean pork and fat pork, 1 part lean to 2 parts fat. I mean 1 part fat to 2 parts lean. And you need this proportion of fat because it makes a tender sausage and gives the flavor. And if you don't have 1 part lean, 2 parts fat and 1 part lean, 1 part fat to 2 parts lean, you're going to have a rather tough sausage. And the great question is, if you're not in the sausage business really, or you don't live near a sausage area, you just have to look around to get this combination. And one thing is a pork butt. And a pork butt comes from up around in the shoulder, and it's a good combination of fat and lean. And so that is something to look for. And also you can look for other fatty cuts, like country spare ribs with quite a bit of fat in them. The best kind of fat, of course, is to get pork belly, that's fresh, unsmoked, unsalted bacon, or what they call fat back. And if you're in a neighborhood that makes sausages, you can buy all of this. Otherwise, collect what fat you can, such as what comes off the fatty part of a loin roast, and freeze it. And then when you have enough fat, you're ready to make your sausages. And then you can have, if you want to have the meat ground, and you can have it ground by the butcher, or you can grind it yourself, which is very easy to do. And here is some ready ground meat. And we have here 6 cups, or about 3 pounds, and there's 4 cups of lean, that's about 2 pounds of lean, and 2 cups or 1 pound of fat. And that's all ground together into the bowl. And the first sausage mixture I'm going to make is the kind that you use for breakfast sausages, like these little links of sausages, or little sausage cakes. And for this, have the meat ground very fine. And then you add your seasonings. And we want 2½ teaspoons of salt for our 6 cups of meat. And measure that out, make sure that those are level. There's 2 teaspoons, I said 2½ cups, 2½ teaspoons of salt. And we want about a good ½ teaspoon of white pepper. And that would be about probably 20 grinds of a pepper grinder. Now, of course, I've measured this up very carefully, how many grinds make half a teaspoon. And then you want some mixed herbs, about a teaspoon of mixed herbs and spices. And a mixture that I like, this you can do yourself, this you can use what you like, is about a quarter teaspoon each of ground bay, French. In French, that's laurier, bay leaf, and allspice, and thyme, and paprika. And this mixture is going to be what they call in France chair à saucisse. Chair is spelt like chair, and it means flesh or meat, sausage meat. And you can use it either for just regular sausages or for stuffings and pâtés. And in any recipe where it says you want fresh sausage meat, this is what you use. When you're going to make, say, pâtés and terrines, you usually have a base of this. And you beat it all together. And now, depending what you're going to do with it, if you want a thick mixture for sausage cakes, you might leave it like that. But if you're going to stuff it into casings, you can beat in a little bit of water just to make a looser mixture. And this all depends on what you're going to use it for. I've added just a little bit of water and then beat it up thoroughly. And if you have a heavy-duty mixer, a flat beater, that does a marvelous job. But it's also very good to beat it by hand, or you can just mix it with your bare hands if you like. But as soon as that's all nicely mixed up, you then have to check the seasoning. It's dangerous to taste raw pork, as everyone knows, so that you want to take a small spoonful and saute it in a little frying pan until it's thoroughly cooked through, and then taste it. And then add a little more salt or pepper or whatever else you think it needs. And it really should sit for a day or two before you plan to eat it, because the seasonings all meld with it and it makes a nicer mixture. And another thing is, be sure when you're working with fresh pork that you wash everything down very carefully after you've worked with it with hot soapy water. Wash your hands and make sure that everything is well washed off. And if you're going to make little cakes, wet your hands in water and then pick up a little ball of it and just roll it around, and there's your little sausage cake that you do for breakfast or to serve with anything that you would like. And now we're going to do some sausage links. And these are the links, and it's all held in it's all held in shape in what is called a casing. You can see what that is. And you can buy these casings. You can do farm sausages in several ways. You can buy the casings, and if you want to buy them, you ask for natural casings. And all sausages have casings. And the salamis and bolognas and frankfurters, hot dogs, they all have them. And you've been eating sausage casings all your life. And do you know what they actually are? They're made out of pig's guts and sheep's guts. And so that's what you've been eating. So don't say, oh dear, how horrible, because you've been eating it all along. And how to buy them is something of a problem. If you have a friendly butcher, you can ask him and he might sell you a piece or two, just enough for what you want. And you can ask him where you can get them, natural casings, or look up in the yellow pages and under sausages. And there's several sizes of casings. There are great big casings that are called bungs, B-U-N-G-A, B-U-N-G, and they come in a little sack like that. And they're big, as you can see, and they're pretty with blue ends. And you use these for great big sausages, like the ones that are hanging over here, like the big saucissons. à cuire. And as you can see they're big and they're rather expensive, but they're awfully pretty. I don't think these are as useful as the smaller ones, the sheep's casings. Now these are sheep's casings. And this is called a hank or a set, and it contains about 20 long thin pieces of casing, each one about 20 feet long. And you have to undo them. There's this pretty blue thing in the middle. And I suppose there's a logic as to how they're done. I never figured it out. I've only found out that you take a piece and gradually pull it through, following it all to the end. And then when you have it, wind it up. And then put it in a jar with salt, like this. Each piece wrapped up like that, covered with coarse salt, and you can keep them for years in the refrigerator. And the salt preserves it. Put those over there. And then when you're ready to use them, you wash them off and then soak them in cold water. You're washing off the salt and then soaking them, because they've sat in the salt, they're rather hard, and you have to soften them up so that you can open them up and stuff them. As you can see, this is nice and flexible for about an hour or two, and usually it's in cold water, and you usually don't soak it for more than an hour or more than 2 hours, because you might make them too soft. So your only problem here is, how are you going to stuff that great big thin slippery thing? So that's what I'm going to show you now. Getting this a little bit cleaned up here so we can get at it. Now what you have to have is a stretcher of some sort, like a funnel or or even the end of a pastry tube. And here is what is actually called a sausage stuffing horn. As you can see, the casing is on this, and there's the large end, and the large end is where the meat goes through into the casing to fill it. So if you don't have the actual sausage machine, as you will see, you can use something else. And so what you do, you have your wet piece of casing, and then you have your, I can't even get this off. Well, I'll put it on both. It won't make any difference. You wet this, maybe wetting it will earn it all. Doesn't make any difference. This is the principle you're going to see. Then open this up. And there is a little opening. There it is. And put it on the end of the funnel. This is officially called a stuffing horn. And then, I think it's a good idea to cut these into about 2 to 3 feet pieces, and then run cold water through. And look at it. This is what is known as organic cooking in the real sense of the word. And then start pushing it up. I think this makes about the easiest way of putting the stuffing on the horn. And then you keep adding as many pieces as you like. And always leave about 4 inches, about 3 or 4 inches free, and you'll see why. Because you're going to have to use this to tie up the sausage afterwards. Now, we have several sausage stuffing mechanisms here. Here's a great big Austrian stuffer. And here is the friendly pastry bag. I'm going to show you how these all work. And here is just a regular meat grinder, which really works extremely well with the stuffing horn attached. And you just follow the directions on how it goes, because they all come with a sausage attachment. That's the horn. As you see, by pushing the meat in, it gradually comes out and fills the casing. But what you want to be very sure is no matter what system you're using, you want to sort of hold the end here against the horn so that the meat is going in without making any bubbles. Because say that if you get a great big air bubble in here, well, I've done this so beautifully, there isn't an air bubble anywhere. But if you do, then you'll just have a vacant part of your casing when you cook it. So hold onto it a little bit and keep pushing it like that. Then you have to push down in here. And this meat grinder is known as a number 10, and that happens to have a large plate and then the stuffing horn, which fits right on. And so here is the pastry bag, if you haven't anything else, with the casing pushed up onto it. And that works quite well. I mean, it's not as easy as the meat grinder, but it certainly is possible. And this has, you see, it has the regular tube on it and then the other tube onto which the casing is pushed. In this you have to be very careful not to make the air bubbles. Can you see there is an air bubble there? So what you have to do is to either push the meat up or push it back. And now here is an Austrian stuffer. There's the meat in the tube there, and here's a wooden plunger, and there's your casing, and then you just have to force it in. I found that this is the best way to do it. And some people turn it. Some people turn it and brace it against something. I have a friend, Judith, who does that. I don't seem to like this one better. And this I got from a mail order catalog. But that works pretty well. But with all of these, you see, particularly with this one and with the pastry bag, you must have your mixture soft enough or you just would absolutely never get it in. And so now, once you've got your casing filled, if you want to make links, here's how you do it. I'll do it out of this enormous business here. When you're through, you pull off that amount of casing, leaving yourself quite a bit of extra, I think. And then start at one end and just very, very carefully twist. And there's your link. And if you want, you can tie the links with thread or string, but be very, very careful when you're twisting that you don't break your casing. But that's how you go about it. Now I shall get rid of a little bit of this because we're going into another phase. Now we're going to make these great big sausages. These are called the saucissons à cuire, or saucissons de ménage. And these are the kind that you cook and then you serve with sauerkraut or potatoes or beans. And these are the ones that you can get so much in France, and they're very hard to get here. This actually is a store-bought one, because I wanted you to see that you do get them, but it's made in a big bung, one of those enormous casings. And this one is made simply in cheesecloth. And you have your same mixture here, the chair à saucisse that we had before, of 4 cups of lean pork and 2 cups of fat pork. And while the chair à saucisse, or sausage meat, was passed through the fine blade of the cutter, this is coarsely ground. And with the same seasonings, you're going to then add a little bit more. So if you remember what we already had, which I hope you do, we then want 3/4 teaspoon more salt, because this sausage is going to cure, so it needs a little salt, which acts as a preservative. There's 3/4 teaspoon more salt, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of cracked black pepper. That's going to give it a bit of zing. and then a clove of garlic put through the press. You can omit the garlic if you like, but I think it's very nice with it. And then we want to have a quarter of a cup of cognac or armagnac. And you want to use the real stuff. If you're not going to use something good, you can't use rot gut. You've got to use the real stuff. Otherwise, leave it out. And then we want saltpeter or potassium nitrate. We just want a quarter teaspoon of that. Just a little, a little tiny bit. And that gives the pink color to the meat. And then you want a little bit of sugar to counteract the drying effect. That's 3/4 teaspoon of sugar, which counteracts the drying effect of the saltpeter. And then you beat it all up just as before. And then you saute a little bit and check the seasoning. And so this, I'm going to show you how to do it very easily, just doing it in cheesecloth. If you have the big bungs, you can do it just the way we saw. Saltpeter you can buy in a drugstore, by the way. You ought to be able to. And now here we have cheesecloth, which has been dipped in melted lard. There's your melted lard. And then you have your sausage meat, which has been formed into a roll, and that just goes onto your cheesecloth. I think this is a very clever system. This was developed by my colleague Simka, my spinach twin. Then you roll this up tight to get the nice sausage shape. And then you tie one end, twist it up hard, and then tie it good and tight. And then you tie the other end, and at this point, twist it hard and push the meat up so that you're sure it's nicely done. And then you get an enormous piece of string. And tie the other end, and then the rest of this enormous piece of string is going to be spiraled down the circumference to keep the meat together. Possibly it's not necessary, but it seems to me it is. I think it might flatten out. So just wind it about. And wind it about until you get this shape here. And then you are going to be ready. You shouldn't eat it now because it needs curing, either in the icebox, or you're going to get the best taste if you cure it and give it the dry air cure. And just hang it up any place where you get plenty of air and it's between 70 and 80 degrees, and hang it up for 3 days. And this ages it. It gives it a very nice flavor. And it's rather like aging cheese or wine or game. And I think this is up to you whether you'd like it this way done or not. But I think it's very good because it has a special flavor and it really tastes like something that came from the old sod. And then put it into simmering water, salted water, or poach it in bouillon and wine. And if you're doing one of the big sausages in a casing, prick it first with a two-pronged fork in two or three places to let out the fat. And you want to poach it for 30 to 40 minutes. And then it's done. You can take a meat thermometer and test it, putting it down into the middle, and the meat thermometer should read 165 to 170. Or if you prick it with a fork, the juices run out clear yellow with no rosy color. And then when it's ready, out it comes. You can let it, if you're going to serve it hot, you can let it cool in its cooking liquid. And you just peel off all of the peel off all of the cheesecloth. And here it is, peeled. If I can get it out of here. And I've just had it back in its water to keep it warm, so that's all peeled. And you notice the little marks on the little marks will never show after it's been sliced. And I'm now going to slice it so you can see how it looks. And slice it on the bias. Look at that lovely pink color in there. See, that is the saltpeter that's done its work. And then I'm going to slice your great big one here, again on the bias. And this is the store-bought one, which is even pinker than mine. Maybe they must have put in more saltpeter. There, I'll slice off a few more. Well, I think this is a very nice sausage, the store-bought one. But this one, I think you'll find that your own is even better because you know what it's in it, and as somebody said who tasted one of these, it tastes as though somebody made it who really very deeply cared what they were doing. Now I'll slice another bit more. But they have a wonderful smell of the old country. We served some to a Frenchman the other day, and he just sat down and he said, "My God, where did you get those sausages?" And he couldn't believe it when I said, "Well, these are homemade." I want you to see how they look when you serve them. And here is a great bean dish. And another suggestion is sauerkraut. Either one makes a marvelous, marvelous meal with the sausages. So we shall I'll start out with some beans. Haricots panache, cooked in wine and seasonings. And there's a little bit of each type of sausage. And then we have the sauerkraut. And with this you can serve wine or beer. Beer is very nice, certainly with the sauerkraut. That's a great Alsatian dish. And so, why not stuff it yourself? And that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit!
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation. Julia Child is co-author of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Volumes 1 and 2.